roadmap that had been put in place to enable the attainment of the 2/3 gender role and, of course, the empowerment of women. Our discussion today is a discussion on whether the policy and budgeting of government is actually walking the talk or not. In this case, we want to have a discussion around gender-sensitive budgeting and what that looks like, so that we can then ask, is government really walking the talk? And joining me in studio with that conversation, first off, of course, Professor Tobias Olwen. He's from JKUAT. He is a regular face here. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you.
And of course, Nelly Chepkemoi, a political activist, political aspirant and commentator on political and current affairs. Karibu sana.
Thanks.
I'll start with the Prof. Currently, there's been a lot of conversation around the budget policy statement. We've seen lots of conversation about taxation and that sort of thing. Do you think currently the government policy reflects consciousness about empowering women, especially through the budgeting and the policy process?
Currently, there isn't much that we have seen.
Yes.
However, in the 2024 budget policy statement, there have been a few statements that have been put there, including the upcoming of Biashara Bank, which actually is interested to fund women organizations when they're in groups like chamas and the rest. And also the issue about the gender-based violence. I think there is a statement that has been dropped there. And also the issue about capacity building for women-led businesses. Now, the only challenge is the realization of the same. That is what we will need to see, because you see, the ladies are waiting to see whether that will translate into action. So that is what we have in the BPS 2024.
Now, Nelly, recently the United Nations Women's Organization, UN Women, put out data about what they call non-paid work that is essentially done by women. So it's called the care industry, essentially. And the perspective then is, if the budget is talking about, for example, building a road, vis-a-vis piping water to a village, the project that's piping water to a village then benefits women who would have to walk miles to find water, meaning that they have free time to do other things, vis-a-vis the other project that would benefit everybody but leave women in sort of the same space. Do you think we have put enough focus on that kind of thing?
I think with the unpaid care work, as you say, it's a new concept that's really coming up and taking shape in Kenya right now.
Yes.
It's, however, not being taken positively by a majority, but we appreciate the efforts that are being put in place by the current regime towards realizing it. And then now back to the point where you asked where it's piping water, and we have that as well. So I think it's a matter of looking at the priority. What do these people specifically, they're not just women, but they make up the majority. So what do they really want? It's a matter of the government has, as much as it looks on its development plan, it also needs to prioritize whatever the people, the citizenry for that matter, that particular space are in need of. Yes. And then for the matter that you've just asked, Prof, about the gender responsive budgeting, I am very happy that it is even this week that the Parliament, the National Assembly, is having a discussion on the budget policy statement. And I would like to take my angle on the education sector and still on the gender responsive budgeting. So when you look at this budget that is before the Assembly, there's the matter of menstrual health. It is something that we really need to take up. It has been taken up, but not much has really been realized. For example, I want to read something here. So there was a basic education amendment of 2016 that was put into place, but it's not really been implemented that much. And Prof has alluded to something about implementation. In this country, we have very good policies, very good guidelines coming from the ministries and the August House, but when it comes now to the implementation, it's
where do you think the challenges are? Why aren't we seeing movement? Is it lack of political will? Is it that it's the exact opposite, that people are hell-bent and said this will not happen? Is it that we don't know how? Is it lack of capacity? Is it lack of financing? What could be the challenge?
In a way, I would say there's different dynamics involved, and it's like you've mentioned some of them.
Yes.
And number one, it has to come from the political, goodwill. If we don't have that goodwill as a nation, as a leadership in a country, then we can't see any development. We can't see any implementation of this. Number two is when it comes to budgeting, the finance aspect. When you look at the budget policy statement, you will find that such an issue like the menstrual health management, it was shifted from the Ministry of Education to the Ministry of Gender. And so it creates like a lacuna between, so we as the citizens, we are now confused on who is really responsible for the children to be able to access this menstrual health management.
So what should be the way forward, essentially, on an issue such as that? Do we say then that we take this back to the Ministry of Education, because then that guarantees financing and then guarantees a channel through which its role? But then what about the people who are not captured under the ministry?
Okay, so for me, I would take the angle of the ministry, whereby it is something that we even recommended when we were doing a research on this,
yes.
To present a memoranda to Parliament. We thought that it is best if we have it under the Ministry of Education, yes, and try have a centralized control or management, whereby there's funds from the national government. So yes, another thing that has to be taken into account is the government or exchequer being able to provide them monetary requirement or the resources on good time. So because if we have a centralized way under the Ministry of Education, yes, then this money trickles down to the schools, trickles down to the the children. So in itself, it ends up covering the money aspect, yes, employment, and as it goes down to the school, then through the feeding program again that yes, is under the Ministry of Education, then this money will be able to even help the women that are within the area of the schools, because they will be able now, as much as it is money meant for this menstrual whatever, and right now we're also talking about the issue of climate. Yes. So in a way, it is sorting something like that, when these parents are able to be given such money, yes, and they're able to do kitchen gardening, and the schools are able to buy the foods from them.
Yeah, so Prof, quite a bit to unpack. Essentially, when you look at the things that you've talked about, and that there is actually movement, from where you sit as an expert, what are the challenges? Because beautiful policy, very little implementation, year in, year out.
Yes, Peter, the issue is the political will and prioritization. We need to prioritize what we have said as a society. Like we have seen the journey of 2/3 gender rule. Yes. It has been a whole issue. People are expressing that they are willing, but when they reach the stage, yes, where they need to do something, it is not happening. So I think the political will need to be right. We need also to be right in terms of enacting the laws that support and enhance gender equality, and also be sure to implement them, and also budget for them, provide for the budget, and ensure that there is fulfillment of the same. But I also think that there is a need for more pressure to be put on the government of the day in terms of ensuring that these women-based aspects, priorities, and also budget come in. So I think there's a need for pressure groups to work on this, particularly on when it comes to business and women-led enterprises, and ensuring that an enterprise is women-led. We need to see much of the intentional effort on this.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the challenges we've had for a very long time is absorption of funds at the grassroots, essentially. Coupled with that is local capacity to implement, do some of the things that we are talking about, even the skill set in terms of if we were to devolve political power in the ways that we are saying and be inclusive, do we have the representative capacity at the grassroots to be able to take up that challenge, Prof?
Yes, I think we have offices. One time I was doing something in Kakamega, and I found out that there is a strong gender office led by a woman. So I think the offices that are there need to work. I think we have offices when it comes to local representation, particularly at the county level. Each and every county is having these offices in place. So we actually need to just see that they are working. And probably there may be a need for bodies which are led by women to ensure that even at the local level, we achieve this. At the county level, at the ward level, we achieve this. I think what is happening is probably when we go to the county, the ward is not there. We find that it's just dominated by men. But at county level, we have the offices. So I think there's a need to have more structure down there in terms of the ward and the others.
Yes, so before we go to the break, Nelly, very briefly, as a young person, the claim has been that the capacity is lacking, that we don't have women who are up for the challenge in terms of leadership, with the necessary education and the wherewithal to take up these leadership positions, and that is what is holding essentially this gender mainstreaming aspect back. Do you think that is the case?
No, I don't really think that's the case. I don't even think, I know we have enough young women who are trying to come up like myself. What we lack is the intergenerational mentorship that would expect from the women who've been there and the older leaders to be able to hold our hands and show us the way. So for me, I think there are women who are really coming up and they are young. What we lack as a nation is the mentorship that they need to be shown the way that this is how things are done. This is how the support that really they need is what we lack as a country. And with that and fair representation and more representation of women, then we will be able to talk about the gender sensitive budgeting that we are talking about, because I want to believe with the fair and more representation of women, then they're able to articulate their issues, hence bringing about a more gender sensitive budgeting when it comes to this process.
Okay, interesting. So we want to go to the break now, but when we come back, we want to talk about, among other things, taxation and women and the move by government to create, new taxes, deepen tax, and indeed create a tax database that will enable them take stock of just where they are benchmarking internationally in terms of tax efficiency. That after the break. Do stay with us. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.